Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the pre-construction Meet the Contractor public meeting for the Quivira Road 143rd to 151st Street Improvement Project. This will be the final public meeting before we start construction on this project. Thank you for joining tonight. My name is Chad Jones. I am the City of Olathe's project manager for this project, and I'm joined tonight by members of our project team. Just as a brief overview of some of the topics that we will be covering tonight, we will we'll introduce other members of the project team. We will go over the project improvements at a high level. We'll look at traffic impacts that you can expect during construction. We'll take a brief look at the project schedule, and then we'll also have time to answer any questions that you may have at the end of this presentation. If you do have questions during the presentation or when we get to the Q&A period, please feel free to submit those using the Q&A chat box function in Zoom. There is also a just general chat box where I'd encourage you to put your email address if you'd like to receive a copy of these project slides at the conclusion of this meeting. Again, my name is Chad Jones. I will be the City of Olathe's project manager for this project. Kelsey Fletcher will be our project inspector for the project. Kelsey's role will be to be aware of all construction activities and be a constant present on site. She'll ensure that construction is following project plans and city specs. We're joined by Taylor Smith with H&TB, who's their project manager for this project. He and other H&TB staff work to design the project improvements and will continue to provide support during construction. And McEnany Construction was selected as the general contractor for this project. McEnany has extensive experience working in Olathe. Zach Tincher will be the project manager for the project, and Brandon Reynolds will be the site superintendent. At this time, we'll talk about just a overview of the project improvements. We will be reconstructing Quivira Road from 143rd Street to 151st Street from its current two-lane undivided ditch section road to a two-lane divided arterial road with medians and turn lanes. This will also include a roundabout at 148th Street. Enclosed storm sewer system will be installed to provide better stormwater management. There will be street lighting installed in the median and sidewalks on both sides of the street. On the west side, there will be a 5-foot sidewalk, and on the east side, there will be a 10-foot shared use path. Here's another look at the typical section. As I described, it'll be 2 lanes with a median. There will be bike lanes in both directions of travel. And again, we'll have a sidewalk on both sides with a 5-foot more typical sidewalk on the east side and the wider sidewalk on the west side. Here you can see on the screen a exhibit showing the signed detour route that will be in place throughout construction. We will be detouring motorists to the east or to the west over to Flum Road. So for example, if you were heading northbound and would typically use Quivira, you would make a right at 151st Street to go to Flum. And similarly, if you were headed southbound, you would make a right at 143rd Street to go over to Flum and make your way over to Quivira to continue going south. This will be the posted route. However, we do know that for some of these neighborhoods, there's local street networks that can be utilized in lieu of this detour, depending on your destination or travel tendencies. Now we're going to take a look at the sequencing of the project. In previous public meetings, we did discuss sequencing moving from south to north. However, after we selected our contractor, we had some discussions on just efficiency of construction, and city approved a request from McEnany to move from north to south in 2 phases rather than 3. So the first phase will be from just north of 147th Street and up to 143rd Street. And phase 2 will be the south 2/3 of a mile from 151st Street to 147th Street. With this change, there will be some small adjustments to some of the traffic impacts, and we'll discuss those as we move through this slideshow. First, we'll take a look at some of the traffic impacts that will be occurring during phase 1 and how we will address those. Here you see kind of a simplified signing plan that'll show where detours are posted and where road closure signs will be placed. Here's the a zoomed in aerial of phase one, focusing on 143rd through 144th place with the project improvements overlaid. Um, I know there's some access concerns with 143rd Terrace during construction. Um, so to address those, our contractor will be constructing the median directly in front of 143rd Terrace at the end of phase one to allow motorists to access 143rd Street signalized intersection rather than having to drive through the project area. The residents at 14410 Quivira will have maintained access to 144th Place to utilize the local street network to go north or south. Um, During specific construction activities, there may be instances where this is a full closure, and our project team will be communicating with homeowners and other residents as needed when we are aware of those impacts happening. Residents on the east side and Ashford Villas will utilize their local street network to navigate to either 143rd Street or 151st Street to get to their destinations and utilize those arterials for travel. Following the completion of phase one and the median being completely constructed, residents on the west side, so 143rd Terrace and 14410 Quivira, will either be able to use 144th Place or make a U-turn movement where we will be constructing this bump out to make that movement easier to access the signal at 143rd Street. Next, we'll look at the south portion of the project, phase two, and the traffic impacts there. Similar to how we looked at phase one, here is a snapshot of some of the signage and road closures that will be posted throughout the duration of this phase. Here's our improvements over an aerial again. For phase two, the contractor will be maintaining access to some degree during construction to 151st Street for residents who have driveways directly onto Quivira. Similar to the property at 14410 Quivira to the north, there may be instances where this is a more hard closure. And again, we will communicate those to homeowners and provide access to the best of our ability throughout those activities. Following completion of phase two in the project at large, residents will be able to utilize the roundabout at 148th Street to change their direction of travel to go north or south, depending on where they are restricted, making left turns due to the installation of the median. Moving north on phase two, residents on 149th and 148th Street will be able to utilize local street networks to exit their subdivisions and access the arterials 143rd Street or 151st Street. Again, once this phase is completed, the roundabout can be utilized to change your direction of travel if you are restricted from making lefts due to the installation of the median. Here's the final segment of phase two, which will be constructed similar to the streets to the south. 147th Street will be able to use their street network in their neighborhood to access 143rd and 151st Street. 147th Street west of Quivira is kind of a unique situation in that they don't have additional roadways to access surrounding streets to exit the neighborhood without using Quivira. So to remedy this, a temporary access road will be constructed in this area at this location to allow residents to exit onto the now complete phase one and head north to 143rd Street. We recognize that in order to do this, phase one will have to be stopped just a little bit short from construction of curb and gutter and that central median to allow both lanes of traffic to be utilized both north and southbound. Following the conclusion of phase two, when 147th Street is completed, these improvements will be constructed at that time. Our tentative project schedule is to begin construction starting next Monday, April 20th. This will primarily be to post roadway signage and begin survey staking. Those are some of the first activities you'll see starting next week. And final completion for the project will be in February of 2027. Breaking down the phases, phase one will roughly last from notice to proceed next Monday to the end of August of this year, at which time phase two would begin and last from August 2026 to the end of January 2027, with February, that final completion be utilized for punch list items that need to be addressed. Working hours for this project will be 8:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday through Friday, with Saturday work being permitted if city approval is granted. Some of the upcoming construction activities you'll see for phase one, like I said, detour and traffic control signage will be placed. Message boards are currently out on site, just alerting motorists to this upcoming closure. Clearing and grubbing of trees and shrubbery will occur as early as next week, followed by water line and storm sewer installation. And then once we have that infrastructure in place, we'll be able to demo the existing roadway and then begin reconstruction to divide that road and install medians. Phase two, we'll be able to begin some of those construction activities prior to the full phase one completion, primarily clearing and grubbing and the water line installation. That's because those activities will be able to be done off the existing roadway, so we will not have to impact traffic on the phase two area while construction is still occurring on phase one. And then once we are able to open phase one to traffic, we will begin storm sewer installation with roadway crossings and be able to demo and reconstruct that road. I do have a note down here that sod restoration will occur after final grading. The city does have specific times of year this can be done. So depending on when construction activities wrap up, this can be as early as fall of this year or may occur next spring. In the event it does have to be pushed till next spring, temporary seeding will be provided to maintain erosion control. To follow along with project updates, we do have a project webpage posted on the City of Olathe website. You can visit this by navigating to it via the Public Works webpage on the City of Olathe website or utilizing this QR code to get pointed directly to that website. That does it for the presentation portion of this meeting and presentation. Thank you for joining again. At this time, we will be answering the questions that have been submitted in the Q&A chat box. We have a question on elevation changes that will be made to the roadway with these improvements and lines of sight. So we are aware of some of the sight distance issues, primarily on the north end of the project. So this roadway profile has been revised slightly to remedy those sight distance concerns and provide better safety from a sight distance perspective throughout the project. And some of these improvements to the profile also aid in the stormwater management and drainage. So we have a question on completion of phase one and how it will impact 147th Street. So let's go to that slide just to take a look at that again. So when phase one is complete, 147th Street on the west side of Quivira will be able to utilize this area to go north on the newly completed phase one to access the intersection. Residents on the east side will need to use the street network to the east to go through those neighborhoods to either access 143rd or 151st because this portion of the roadway will be removed and will be being reconstructed with phase two. So that temporary road bypasses all of our future construction to allow both the 147th Street West residents to exit their neighborhood and give our contractor space to construct the improvements. We have a question on TCEs and notification when access will begin. So I would say if you were a phase one resident with a TCE, that those impacts within TCEs that were granted to the city can begin as soon as next week. So if there are specific concerns, feel free to reach out to me and I will pass concerns along to our contractor and make sure that we are addressing those concerns and getting you any resources you may need to make decisions for fences or anything else on your property. We have a question on trees. Trees will not be planted by McEnany or the project improvements at this time. We have been in discussion with city parks for the possibility of planting post-construction, but it is not an included plan item with the roadway improvement plan set. We have a question that was posted in the chat. Plans to keep Quivira open during the entire process. We will, our contractor will be maintaining local access to the best of their ability so that residents who have driveways directly onto Quivira are able to access their properties every day. For residents who may typically use Quivira to travel north or south, but have neighborhood street networks that can get them to other streets, namely 143rd or 151st, the road will be closed for that type of traffic. Those other roadways will need to be utilized for travel rather than Quivira. We have a question with concerns for exiting onto 143rd Street utilizing Cody Street, which is one of those local streets. Project plans and timing have and will be shared with Overland Park, who operate the signals at 143rd, so that they can monitor those locations to help provide gaps. We do recognize that without the signal, left-hand turn movements may be more difficult, but we will work with Overland Park to coordinate with them to make that that issue lessened during construction and have that signal time to provide gaps as best as we can. We have a question on working hours in the stated 8:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. That is Olathe's ordinance spec for roadway work on an arterial road, which Quivira is. Um, so that at this time is the allowable working hours. We have a question on wider sidewalk and which side of the road it'll be on. The wide sidewalk will be on the east side of Quivira. And you can see that here in this exhibit, the wide sidewalk here. Here east is on the bottom of your screen. So I'm working my way north, and this will be that wide sidewalk with that narrower sidewalk up here on the top of your screen, which is west. Now, I will note here on the roundabout location, it does become a wider sidewalk here, and that is because we have to drop the bike lanes and have an exit for those bikers because it is unsafe for them to utilize the roundabout as their path. So we have an exit, essentially an exit ramp for them, and we widen the sidewalk to allow more room for pedestrians and bikers to utilize that path while they make their way around the roundabout and back into the bike lane. Streetlights will be LED. We have a question on that, and they will be the same brightness and streetlight color that are around Olathe roads currently. We have a question on utility relocation and some of the impacts there, namely holes in the yard. We are currently working with utility companies and their contractors to restore areas that are outside of our project limits. Our expectation is that they restore those to like or better condition. We have another question on just the closure and the timing for specific streets. So during phase one, Quivira will be closed from 143rd Street to just north of 147th Street. Contractor will be providing local access for this residence that only has access to 100 or to Quivira Road and maintaining access to 143rd Terrace residents by leaving a gap temporarily in this median to allow them to access 143rd Street. Following completion of phase one, 144th Place, this resident and 143rd Terrace will be able to utilize the newly constructed divided Quivira to move north to the signal. After we've completed phase one, phase two will close Quivira, except to local traffic from 151st Street to north of 147th Street. And just to run through how that impacts these neighborhoods, again, driveways that only have access to Quivira will be maintained by our contractor to allow them to utilize 151st Street. Once phase two is completed, they'll be able to make right turns if they are obstructed by a median. And like, let's utilize this driveway as an example. If they need to go south, they will need to make a right and go up to the roundabout to make that movement to go south. During construction of phase two, 149th and 148th Street will utilize existing local street networks to go to 143rd or 151st to make those movements out of the neighborhoods. And then once construction is complete, similar to the driveways down south, if you're restricted by a median, you can utilize the roundabout to change your direction of travel. We've got this question on stormwater drainage. If I don't have those specific plans pulled up for this meeting. However, if you want to send me an email with your specific question pertaining to stormwater, I'll be happy to answer that for you. We have a question on storm sewer south of 147th Street and whether or not it will be enclosed. All of the storm sewer that we are installing will be enclosed and discharged into local waterways to be drained in their natural patterns as they are today. But everything that will be installed with the project, so storm sewer inlets off the curb and any area inlets to pick up surface flow currently will be enclosed in piping to daylight to existing waterways. We have a question on speed at the roundabout. So the posted speed for Quivira will be 40 miles an hour, and there will be signage in advance of the roundabout alerting motorists to slow their speed to 15 miles an hour. At this time, with it being 6 o'clock and halfway through our scheduled 1 hour meeting time, I'm going to run through the presentation again in case anyone joined late and may have missed it. Continue posting your questions in the Q&A box, and I will answer those at the conclusion of this presentation. And again, if you would like a copy of the slides, please put your email in the chat box. So if you were just joining us, maybe midway through the presentation or for the Q&A period, this is the pre-construction meet the contractor public meeting for the upcoming Quivira Road, 143rd to 151st Street. During this meeting, we will introduce the project team, discuss the project improvements at an overview level, and then discuss the traffic impacts for and during construction, and then touch on project schedule, and again, answer your questions once we've concluded the presentation. Our project team is myself. I am Chad Jones, the City of Olathe's project manager. Kelsey Fletcher will be the city's project inspector. Kelsey will be frequently on site and aware of all construction activities, and she will ensure that construction follows project plans and adheres to city specifications. Taylor Smith is the project manager for the city's design consultant, H&TB. He and other H&TB staff work to design the project and will continue to provide support throughout construction. And McEnany Construction was selected as the city's general contractor for the project. McEnany has extensive experience working in Olathe, and Zach Tincher will be their project manager, with Brandon Reynolds being their project site superintendent. To recap the improvements that will be constructed here on Quivira Road, the roadway will be reconstructed from its existing two-lane undivided ditch section roadway to a two-lane divided arterial road with a median, curb and gutter, and turn lanes. A roundabout will also be constructed at 148th Street. Enclosed storm sewer system will be involved to improve stormwater management in the area. Street lighting will be installed in the median, and sidewalks will be constructed on both sides of the road, with a 5-foot sidewalk on the west side of Quivira and a 10-foot wider sidewalk on the east side of Quivira. Here's a look at what that typical section of the road will be. As discussed, those streetlights will be in the median, which will divide the road with the smaller sidewalk on the west side and the wide sidewalk on the east side of Quivira. With the closure of Quivira to allow for construction, a detour route over to Flum will be posted. For example, if you were traveling north and would typically use Quivira, you would make a left at 151st Street to go to Flum and then make a right turn at Flum and at 143rd to get back to Quivira and continue north. Similarly, for southbound traffic, a right turn at 143rd Street would be made to head over to Flum to get back to Quivira and continue traveling south. While this is the posted route for Quivira traffic north and south, we recognize that many residents will utilize local streets and their networks to get to their destinations and use those for travel, maybe rather than utilizing this posted detour. Next, we'll discuss the sequencing of construction that'll happen for this project. If you've been present at meetings in the past, we previously discussed this being constructed from south to north. However, after conversations and consideration at the request of McEnany for project construction efficiency, we have rephased this from north to south. And rather than 3 phases, it will only be 2. The first phase will be here at the north end of the Quivira project area from just north of 147th Street to 143rd Street, with phase 2 being from 151st Street to that same north point, just north of 147th Street. Now we'll look at each phase individually and some of the traffic impacts that you can expect during construction. Here's just a simplified signage plan showing where road closure signs will be posted and where detour routing will be posted for both vehicles and pedestrians. So with phase 1, here's the final constructed project improvements overlaid on an aerial. Residents at 143rd Terrace will still be able to access 143rd Street signal during construction to avoid having to drive through a construction zone to the south. That median won't be constructed until the end of phase 1 to allow that access to remain. This resident at 14410 Quivira will have maintained access to 144th Place with limited full closures depending on construction activities. And then Ashford Villa residents there on the east side of Quivira will use that local street network to the east to access 143rd Street or 151st Street. Following the completion of phase 1, the residents at 143rd Terrace and 14410 Quivira will be able to use a U-turn movement aided by this bump out to provide more room for that movement to access 143rd Street intersection and the signal to the north. Next, we'll look at some of the traffic impacts that you can expect during phase 2. Similar to phase 1, here's just a overview of some of the signage and where road closure signs will be posted and detours for pedestrians and vehicles. Here's that same exhibit showing the project improvements on an existing aerial. Residents who only have access to Quivira without a local street network will have maintained access to 151st Street that our contractor provides. Again, depending on construction activities, this may be impacted, and our contractor or the city will be coordinating with individuals when we are aware of those forthcoming. Following the completion of the project and the construction of this median, residents will be able to use the roundabout if they're unable to make a left turn due to that median to change their direction of travel. During construction of phase 2, residents on 149th and 148th Street will utilize those local neighborhood streets to access 151st or 143rd Street and not have to impact the construction area. And then following the completion of phase 2 in the project, the roundabout again can be used to change your direction of travel north to south if you are unable to make a left due to that median. Here's the north end of phase 2 where The phases connect at just north of 147th Street. On the east side of Quivira, residents will still be able to use those local street networks to avoid the construction zone and access 143rd and 151st Street. However, on the west side, there are no local streets. They only have access to Quivira, and in order to keep them access and not impact their uh, their access to their neighborhood, a temporary road will be constructed to allow them to access the now complete Phase 1 pavement and make their way north to 143rd Street intersection. Now, with this access road being necessary, some of Phase 1's improvements, namely the curb and gutter and the median, won't be completed until Phase 2 is finished to allow them to cross over that center portion of the roadway. Next, we'll discuss our tentative project schedule. Our contractor, McEnany, will have notice to proceed next Monday, April 20th, and their final completion will be in February of 2027. Phase 1 will begin at that notice to proceed date next Monday, the 20th, and will last until the end of August 2026. Phase 2 will pick up at the conclusion of Phase 1 and last from August 2026 to January 2027. You'll notice that's a little earlier than our final completion date, and that just allows time for punch list items to be addressed by our contractor. Working hours throughout construction will be 8:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday through Friday, and Saturday work will be permitted with city approval as necessary. Some upcoming construction activities you can expect for Phase 1 are the placement of detour signage and traffic control signage. Currently, there are message boards displaying and alerting motorists to the upcoming closure, clearing and grubbing of trees and shrubs, and then water line and storm sewer installation will all occur prior to the demolition of the existing roadway pavement and construction of the new road. Phase 2 will have some activities that can occur prior to the completion of Phase 1. These activities will be confined to things that can be constructed or removed during or off the roadway to not impact the Phase 2 pavement. So that'll be primarily clearing and grubbing and installation of water line. And then after Phase 1 is open to traffic, our contractor will be able to install storm sewer and then remove the existing pavement and construct new Quivira Road. Sod will be installed at all areas that our contractor disturbs or grades, and that'll occur after final grading, and that'll depend also on the time of year. So the city has approved planting windows for sod. So depending on when construction is completed, it may be outside those windows, at which point our contractor would temporarily seed the area to establish plants for erosion control. And then when the next sod window opened, they would come back and install that sod. Project updates can be found on the city's webpage for the project and will be updated periodically. This webpage can be navigated to on the City of Olathe website via the Public Works tab, or you can utilize this QR code on the screen to go directly to that website. Thank you all for joining tonight to learn about the upcoming construction to Quivira Road and how it'll impact your neighborhoods or your directions of travel. At this time, we'll look at the Q&A box and questions that have been submitted. On your screen, you'll find both my contact info and Zach Tincher, McEnany's 24-hour emergency contact, his info. And at any point during construction, if there's a concern, feel free to reach out to either one of us. We have a question on what the median will be. I assume that is pointing to the materials that will be installed in the median. So on the wider portions of the median, that will be sodded. And our Parks Department has discussed maybe planting some trees there as well. And the narrower areas of the median where turn lanes are present, that will be a stamped concrete treatment there. You can see that in this exhibit right here. So wider areas will be sodded, and then where it narrows up, where turn lanes are, that'll all be stamped brick or brick pavers rather than stamped. My apologies. We have a question on closure for phase one beginning 421. That's correct. Those message boards are accurate and that McEnany will begin clearing and grubbing activities and closing phase one portion of the road to everyone except local traffic beginning on Tuesday, the 21st. We have a question on a roadway profile concern at 147th Street where there's a site issue. That was picked up during our design and communicated to us by several residents during the design portion of this project. And that has been improved with the new profile of the roadway to improve sight distance and safety in that area. We have a couple questions on the posted speed um, on Quivira after the completion of this project. Yes, Quivira is currently a 35-mile-an-hour street, and it will be posted at 40 at the conclusion of the project. Um, we recognize that the streets to the south, or one of the streets to the south, is 35, and then it's 45 to the north. So this is just bridging that gap and allowing for a 40-mile-an-hour posted speed, and that's aided by the roundabout, which will force motorists to slow down, and the divided roadway is safer, which allows for that 40 mile an hour to be a tenable solution here. If there are any more questions, again, feel free to post those in the Q&A box. And if you would like a copy of these slides at the conclusion of the meeting, I will get those sent to you if you place your email in the chat box. We have a question regarding access for the residents at 14410 Quivira and how that will be maintained throughout construction. So that is this residence right here. Similar to the driveways on the south end of the project, our contractor will maintain access to allow this resident to access 144th Place and then utilize the street network to go to 143rd Street via that network. Um, as mentioned, there may be construction activities that do impact how this access is maintained, and at which point we will communicate that with the resident to make sure we are not um, to make sure that they're aware of that upcoming closure and we can all work together to plan that accordingly. But this will be maintained to a traversable degree throughout construction. Access will be maintained on a daily basis. In addition to the slides being sent out, this meeting will be recorded and will be posted to that project website for viewing um, at any time while you're reviewing either the slides or rewatching the meeting. Feel free to reach out. Again, here is that QR code and web address to go to the city webpage for this project. Thank you everyone again for joining. Like I said, these slides will be sent out at the conclusion of the meeting. Continue to submit questions as they come up. We can jump around the slideshow to answer those. But again, yeah, just appreciate you taking the time out of your evening to join us to learn more about the upcoming construction to Quivira. And if you have more questions or you feel like a question maybe wasn't addressed in the way that you were hoping it would be, feel free to reach out to me directly. My contact info is on the screen. I'd be happy to discuss that further or answer in a different way. Always available during construction to answer questions that you may have. I want to thank everyone again for joining tonight. This concludes our meeting and the presentation. As a reminder, please reach out to me with any questions or concerns about this project during construction. We look forward to it. Um, we look forward to partnering with McEnany, and we think it's going to be a great end product for everyone in the neighborhoods and the public at large. So again, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your evening.